Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming. My name is Simone Stallman. I am the Director of Retreats at Isabella Freedman. I've been with Chazon and Isabella Freedman for the last 3.5 years. Today, this session is called The History of Isabella Freedman. Adam, or Segulah, as some of you may know him, Adam Sher, arrived at Isabella Freedman 13 years ago as a summer intern with Eilat Chaim Center for Jewish Spirituality. He soon met his wife Meg at Isabella Freedman when she was a staffer for the Adama Farm and Fellowship. He worked as a porter and a chef in the IF kitchen for the next 3 years, and then became director of Eilat Chaim in 2010. He and Meg were married at Isabella Freedman in 2012. Soon thereafter, he took on building and running all of the retreats at IF as Director of Transformative Experiences. In 2017, he became the general manager, overseeing the retreat center as a whole. IF transformed and grew significantly up until this moment, on the threshold of a new chapter for IF. Adam lives down the road from Friedman in Falls Village with Meg and his sons Eli, who's 5, and Noah, who's 2. Adam, take it away.
So great to see everybody here. I see so many familiar and beloved faces. So thanks for choosing to take this time to go on a little journey with me. You can see in back of me here our beloved Lake Miriam, and I am sitting in the Reb Zalman Memorial Library here at Isabella Freedman. I think before I start in to my story, and I have some photos to share, I want to recognize that all around the world today, for the past couple of weeks, and truly for a long, long time before that, there have been people struggling to make this world a better place, a more equitable place, a more just place, a more sustainable place in every sense of the word for the future generations. And particularly right now, there's a big uprising, as we all know, and I take hope in that. And I think that in looking at our past at Isabella Freedman, and in looking at the past in our society, it should unlock the potential to actually redeem the present and the future. So I want to invite us to kind of direct all the feelings that you might have about the history that we've shared together to this larger project of making a future together that is beautiful and just. So I'm going to share my screen, and I had my phone open as well because I was hoping I could see your faces and share my screen. But I'm going to just share my screen, so I want to take in the faces. Hi, hi. Oh, shalom, shalom, friends. So many sweet people. Okay. I see you, you see me. I think we can use chat. So I think while I'm talking, please share your reflections and thoughts and feelings as you see these pictures. Is there anybody here with us, and maybe you can chat it in, is there anyone here with us who hasn't been to Isabella Freedman before? Well, if there is, welcome, because this is not just about the past, this is about the future, and we are growing, each one of us, and as a community, so welcome. So I'm going to share my screen now. All right, so you all recognize this place. And where is this place in the world, both geographically and mythically, if you will? So down the street from Isabella Freedman is a street sign, or a directional sign, this way north to Canaan and south to Goshen. So for those of us who think we know a little bit of biblical geography, or at least mythical geography, that sort of places our dear Isabella Freedman right at the Holy Mountain. This is the place where folks are gathered and gather for peak experiences and then go our ways in whichever direction we're going in our lives, down into Goshen or forward to the promised land. And a little map. You all know this place. So cute, this map. When you come into Isabella Freedman, you see this sign, it's time to slow down. So what's that about? There's a perception that's been shared for many hundreds and perhaps thousands of years that I think is related to the ills and trials and stresses of civilization, and indeed the iniquities and injustices that says you actually need to step back. We need time apart. We need to be able to slow down. We need to be able to come together in order that we might grow into our potential in the world as a society and as individuals. For thousands of years, monasteries and other kinds of places like that were dedicated to that cause for lay people. And the retreat center concept in the 20th century grew out of that. And indeed, the camping concept, in a certain sense, came out of that as well. The sense that we need to get into nature, we need to come together, we need to focus on the very basic and beautiful things. And so there was a person who really understood this quite early on, and her name was Isabella Freedman. And this is a picture of Isabella Freedman that my dear friend and teacher, Arthur Kurzweil, and I have been working on uncovering some pieces of Isabella Freedman's life, and we came across this just a couple of years ago. And she was one of these people who understood this need for retreat, that we retreat in order to advance. And she founded an organization, or she was one of the founding members of an organization in 1893 called the Jewish Working Girls Vacation Society. There is still a t-shirt out there waiting to be born that says Jewish Working Girls Vacation Society, and we should all have it and wear it proudly. This was the precursor organization to Isabella Freedman, and when she eventually passed on, it was named in her honor. But she founded the Jewish Working Girls Vacation Society, and I'm going to quote this so that I get it right. It was established to assist worthy Jewish working girls of small means to spend their summer vacation in the country, in the process aiding their physical development. It provided free or highly subsidized country vacations for these young Jewish women who often were working in very unfavorable situations. This was before there was a labor movement. This is before there was a 40-hour work week or anything like that. They were often in the sweatshops, in the garment district, and lots of other professions. They were right off the boat, so to speak, a lot of the times. And this was a project of really directly caring for people who were being exploited by the rest of society. And it's an interesting model to think about, that one way to do things is to fight against the injustices in the world, and another way, perhaps complementary to that, is to establish systems that show that another world is possible. And I think that's what she did. And this is from the 40s. I won't dwell too long, but it's really interesting to see the occupations that these girls had, these campers. We have bookkeepers. So at this point, this was after it was just the sweatshop workers. You can see where these folks are coming from. Here's a schedule of what they would have done in 1942. Doesn't look that much different from a schedule you might have seen at Isabella Freedman: tennis instruction, swimming, a concert of Chopin. Lovely. And then this document I find most interesting. If you look at the bottom, this is a health report. And it's actually interesting in our unfortunate COVID world here that they start by talking about infections and how they were contained and paid attention to. It's very interesting. But at the end, it says, before the girls left camp, they were weighed. And it was found that the average weight gained was 4 pounds in 1 week's stay. And to me, that's a very clear sign that these young people were malnourished. And in some ways, I think that not much has really changed. Thank God most of us aren't in sweatshops, but the world is a very hard place. And all of us work very hard, and the conditions are not ideal. And in many ways, we become malnourished, whether that's physically, hopefully not, but certainly emotionally, spiritually malnourished. We need that recharge. It's not just a nice thing to have a retreat. It is something that we at Isabella Freedman and Chazon have believed for a long time, going back over 120 years, that this is something that is a need that people have, that we are privileged and honored to offer. So over the many years, this Camp Isabella Freedman model evolved, and the people grew, and still up to this day, and this is a picture from just a couple of summers ago, we have Camp Isabella Freedman, the legacy program of the organization, which lives on in a really, really lovely way, and a beautiful program that's been run by Mickey Raver and Marty Perlmutter and a bunch of others like Laurie von Steinman and Elizabeth Yari. For the past few years, it's been totally revitalized and become something very, very special that I think does the entire history really proud. And I'm reminded that I'm going to try to say a lot of names of people who have done these things, and names that I forget or miss, toss them up in the chat. You folks know a lot about these things. So yes, we became for decades, in kind of from the 70s onwards, a camp for Jewish seniors, sometimes quite low-income Jewish seniors, sometimes Holocaust survivors, and sometimes folks who wanted to take advantage of the opportunity to have a wonderful time and do those very basic but very profound things together. What then happened in the history is that there started to be groups of young Jewish people who discovered this place, and the primary first way that it was discovered by a new generation was through the Teva Learning Center. It's an environmental education program for Jewish youth, and there were educators in the broader school system who saw kids going to Nature's Classroom, which is a secular program that takes kids out, and they said, we should do this too. So they founded Teva, and in the early 90s, Teva started happening here on the fall shoulder season after the senior camp, Camp Isabella Freedman. And for many years, Teva was run by a person named Neely Simchai, and brought to a whole nother level. And many other people followed in her footsteps. Ilan Margulies, and up till now, Ariel Aronoff, who's also done an amazing job bringing Teva into all of our retreats. through Camp Teva, where kids who come on retreats get to experience this as well. And for a long time, Teva did a seminar in Jewish environmental education. This is a flyer from 2013. I have a few flyers that I'll share with you. Here are kids having fun, but they're not just having fun on the lake. They learn about lake ecology. They learn about wild edibles in the woods. They learn about the larger context of environmental degradation and hope. And here we have Ariel, who I mentioned earlier, who genuinely loves children. And of course, the overlook. This is the peak experience, literally, that I was referring to earlier. So the Teva educators who would come here and learn to be environmental educators in the late 90s and early 2000s started to feel that they would like to have a residential community at Isabella Freedman that would be year-round, that would develop those educators and bring them forward into their leadership and really start to put roots down at Isabella Freedman that was different than what had happened before. It was very seasonal before, and this started to become the year-round intentional community, if you will. And that program emerged as Adama. So here are Adama fellows who climbed the overlook at dawn, as they do at the beginning and the end, and sometimes in between of their fellowship program, 3 months. An incredible array of people have come through that program and emerged out to run and start pretty incredible programs in the Jewish world and beyond out of Adama. And of course, growing beautiful veggies and building families along the way. On the left of the kids, you see Lev, that's Shamu's youngest. Shamu is the founder of Adama. This is Jana, who's been the farm director for many years, and her daughter, Suf. So growing veggies, growing kids, growing individual experiences that really pollinate out in the rest of the world. And of course, these little sweet baby goats every year, the sweetest thing. And there's a lot of pictures of baby goats at Isabella Freedman floating out there in the world. And a lot of people who spend real time going down and making that connection with domesticated animals and farm animals that we don't get a chance to often in the rest of the world. And there's something profound about that. You know, as a Jewish people, we were a herding people before we were an agricultural people. And the staff and the wandering in the hills when Moshe saw the burning bushes, chasing after these guys. And we milk the goats, and then people come with their coffee if they're brave, and they get their capra goat coffee. And the compost, all coming from the dining room and fertilizing the soil and really having people connect with the sense of full cycle and what it really means to participate in that cycle. And of course, there's the rotting food that comes out of the dining room or the kitchen and goes down there, and the compostable plates and all that stuff. But there's also, there's a profound teaching about life and death here. And there's also one of the signs here at the compost yard has that line from the Torah, which I'll summarize or misquote by saying, you know, turn it and turn it. There's always something new in it. And so it becomes recycled in the most positive way. And of course, every day there are people finding new Torah inside our Torah and turning our Torah toward the concerns and the issues and the insights of the day. Always new, always old. And there's a lot of eating and food and a lot of communal togetherness. And please God, we'll see a day where people do this again and feel safe. A lot of food, and this sort of started setting the stage in this era, where Adama had arisen out of Teva, and the senior camp program was still running, and there was a sense that we need to kind of build the infrastructure for a retreat center that can be something more holistic, and that grounds people in the everyday lived reality of food and shelter and communal living, but also goes into something, the layers beneath. And of course, food is a very good way to do that. And we're making the pickles. And here, this guy, not the mean looking one, but the happy looking one, is Naftali Hanno, who is a Adama fellow and then an Adama staff person, and he and his wife Anna went on to found Grow and Behold kosher pastured meats that we've served at Friedman for a long time. A great example of a real mensch who came out of Friedman and out of these programs and went to have a big impact in the world, not just the business and meat, but really actually shifting people's understanding of how we interact with animals and how we interact with our resources and how to find joy while being responsible. And here's some of that meat, and we've done all sorts of learning at Friedman that is that really gets into some of the uncomfortable places. For some people, this is fascinating, and for some people, this is uncomfortable. But we don't shy away from that stuff. He's butchering a quarter of a sheep and showing how that's done. This is Ian, also an Adama and Teva guy, who became a shochet, working with Neff. And we've brought in a lot of chefs and food historians. This is Michael Twitty. He was phenomenal at the food conference a few years ago, and I recommend his books very much. And we learned a lot from him. And this is wild crafting food that was all harvested at Friedman. A lot of that happens every year, every day. And I was, as an intro said, I was in the kitchen for a while, and I got to cook, and really what that was about for me, and I think what it's about for a lot of people in coming together over a meal is building community. And it's no less nourishing what goes on at a table in the conversations that happen than the food itself. I mean, it's really, we're as much eating each other, if that doesn't sound too weird. And I want to bring in Chef Richard Neff, who is here for a good while and a wonderful person, and really a light here. He's not with us anymore. Peace be upon him and his memory, a blessing. So many people have come through here and left their mark. He left a big mark. And so I wanted to honor him. Reb Arthur Kurzweil has probably given a magic show here every year that I've been here for the past 13 years. And this is part of that Kabbalistic, incredibly illuminating magic show, talking about Abara Kadabara, how we speak something and it comes into being. And so here we were at Friedman, building this container with the year-round community and the young people and the elders and the food, and abracadabra, along comes Elat Chaim, Center for Jewish Spirituality. And I know there's many folks on this session right now who have a connection, maybe for many, many years, with Elat Chaim before Isabella Freedman. This was a Jewish spiritual retreat center that really advanced the Jewish renewal movement, and beyond as a movement, the process of renewal in people's lives and healing, and emerging teachers and being that R&D lab for Jewish spirituality. And I'd like to think and hope that Isabella Freedman inherited that mission as well when we merged with Elat Chaim in 2007. And a really remarkable thing happened. This unfortunately is not a picture of that, but I think represents that when Elat Chaim came to Isabella Freedman, they did an incredible thing, this community, which was that they took their Sefer Torah that they had at Elat Chaim, and they said, we really need to make this into a ritual. We really need to bring deep meaning into this, because this isn't just a merger. This isn't an organizational thing. This is a threshold moment, and this is the next evolution of our community, and let's honor this. So they took their Sefer Torah and they walked it from Accord, New York, about 60 miles here to Isabella Freedman. I think there were 2 overnights. And in they came through the entryway of Isabella Freedman, and really brought new life and brought Torah here in a totally new way, and in a very, very powerful way. And that was a integration and a transformation that was not easy, as many changes are not easy, but very, very beautiful and productive and generative over the years, as Elat Chaim and the influence of Elat Chaim has become absolutely signature to everything that we do at Isabella Freedman. Incredible legacies there, and too many people to name, but of course, I would name Reb Zalman Schachter Shlomi, Alav Shalom, and so many teachers who came with Elat Chaim and have made a huge impact here at Isabella Freedman. So that first summer when Elat Chaim was here in 2007, I also arrived here. That was 13 years ago. And I spent the summer doing this kind of thing, driving people around on rickshaws and having good conversations. And there's Reb Zalman and Shir Yaakov. And Reb Zalman would come every year for Shavuot, and we planned many incredible retreats together with a lot of amazing teachers. And the reason why I chose this photo, not just because of the really sweet smiles, but also because what Reb Zalman was doing here, and what so many teachers and leaders and participants of every stripe do here, and I've already said this a couple of times, is really connect with each other. Like, that's part of what a retreat is about. That's different from going to a class or a shiur or whatever it might be, because you're going for a walk, you're having a meal, you're meeting each other, the early risers at 5:30 in the morning, standing down by the lake with the mist. You're saying, hey, do you have a moment that we could talk about something that's important to me? And that's really what it's about. And Reb Zalman, in addition to being an incredible teacher of Torah, took pastoral care very, very seriously, and really, really cared about people. And that's something that I think we at Isabella Freedman have really tried to also take very seriously. There are individual people and communities who come here, and their experience is incredibly important. It's not about the content per se, it's about people. And Davenology, of course, Reb Zalman was really into this term, and there have been countless prayer services that have happened here that have really elevated not just the people who are participating, but also the practice of Jewish prayer, and that R&D lab for Jewish spirituality that I mentioned before. I want to mention here also the Davening Leadership Training Institute that was at Elat Chaim for a long time before coming here to Isabella Freedman. Reb Marcia Prager and Sean Zevitt and all of the other people who've been a part of that, the many cohorts of leaders and rabbis in training for Aleph Alliance for Jewish Renewal and people pursuing their independent studies. Really, really that R&D lab and that sense of being innovative yet deeply rooted to the structure of what our tradition offers and loving it so much that they will play with it. So Olat Chaim, so many different kinds of programs. I chose this because I had this poster, and it illustrates to a certain extent some of the array of things that would happen in these Olat Chaim retreats. You have a Talmud Study 101 week with Arthur Kurzweil. You would have the Tikkun Yoga, and many of you I think might have been, or some of you might have been with Diane Bloomfield earlier today doing Torah Yoga, and what she had brought here for many, many years is phenomenal and an amazing and unique experience that can only happen on a week-long retreat, that can only happen with a teacher that's so gifted. We have Rabbi Jeff Roth and meditation out in nature, a piece on issues in politics and social justice, the Great Turning, and then bringing everyone together over Shabbat. And one of the things that started to happen through the integration of Olat Chaim at Isabella Freedman was the phenomenon of having many different prayer services at once and other things going on all at the same time, so that you would have a really diverse community that would come together, and everyone would feel not comfortable. Everyone would feel equally uncomfortable, I hope. And in that, we would kind of find some refuge, that we're all doing something together, that we're all on a journey together. No one's standing still. And we learned Torah, the yurt. I just wanted to bring you to a yurt and think about the classes that you might have had at Friedman, where you have a text in one hand, you have somebody who might be talking, you have a teacher at front, you might have a lot of popcorn questions happening, a lot of talking side to side with folks, just turning and turning it, getting deeply into it. The class ends and you go and have another conversation with somebody about it, and another one over dinner. You chew over it for a few days. And of course, singing. So many shared songs in the history of Isabella Freedman, and so many nights around this campfire. Rabbi David Cooper and Shoshana Cooper, the silent meditation retreat that they led for, I think, about 20 years, and then passed the baton to Jay Michelson and Shir Yaakov and Beth Resnick Folk and Miriam Eisenberger, week long over Christmas every year. Totally a stunning, unspeakable experience. Pun intended. And the Kohenet Hebrew Priestess Institute. Here are people who have gone through an incredible program with Rabbi Jill Hammer and Shoshana Jedwab and Taya, and emerged into all different kinds of innovative leadership and ritual craft in the world, and really want to celebrate these folks and what they're bringing and have brought, both to Friedman and to the rest of the world. Yoga. Arms up, arms up, arms up. This is the Jewish Men's Retreat. Now, still ongoing as mensch work. So, we have women's groups, we have men's groups. There's a lot going on with exploring gender across the spectrum, as we all know, and that work has been happening at Isabella Freedman really, really deeply for years now. And it's a very important part of what it means to be a human being, to feel where you are there and to connect with others and feel scene. A lot of great music. My dear friend Eden Pearlstein here is a rapper who goes by E Prime. This was a Pesach Chol Hamoed concert with the great Jamie Saft and Brad Jones on the bass, and we've had a lot of great concerts here of all kinds, solo piano, violin, strings, performances, theatrical pieces, you name it. This is dawn at Shavuot. This is just one of those experiences. There might be somebody on this call who is here that day. And more singing. And I think this comes from Let My People Sing, which is a great retreat that became very, very popular, that came out of, folks, these two in particular, Margot Segulah and Batya Levine, who attended the Indian Neck Folk Festival that has been happening at Isabella Freedman for 60 years plus. And legend has it that Bob Dylan actually came to that festival in the early 60s, not as a performer, because there are no performers there. It's all people just getting together and playing songs and sharing songs and singing. So these two who were working at Friedman at the time went there and said, there should be a Jewish version of this kind of thing with singing, where people just get together and sing songs, make little circles, sing songs, teach each other songs, make new songs. So said, let's do Let My People Sing. And it started with 30 people maybe the first year, and this past year, unfortunately now it's canceled, but this past year we opened registration and there were like 180 people signed up in 3 days. So this is the way that things grow. And some grow fast and some grow slow and ebb and flow. It's all good. More singing. You can just imagine hearing what that might sound like. And then, of course, there's silence, right? Or there's the still small voice. And being immersed in nature like this, going back to the Jewish working girls, there's something very profound about whatever spirit experience you're having, but having it occur immersed in a deep encounter with the wider ecology that we are enmeshed in. It does something. There's a synergy there. And the group experience, this is a big group. There would always be, especially in the past years of Eilat Chaim, when numbers were a bit more manageable than the behemoth retreats that things have grown into over the past few years. Opening circles, closing circles, very, very important times for people to connect and reflect and get to know one another. And then the Eilat Chaim tradition is to have mishpacha groups, 10 people with a trained leader, and really get deeply into this with each other. And now I'm reminded as I say this that I think that the modality and the technology of Jewish retreats has obviously just permuted and expanded throughout the rest of the Jewish world, right? And I think that there is something to that R&D thing. I think that when Eilat Chaim started in the early 90s, this wasn't so much the case that there were a lot of Jewish retreats happening all over the place. And when Isabella Freedman started doing year-round retreats, we were also modeling these technologies, and people would take them out into the world and hopefully make them better and multiply and be fruitful. And as much as the big group experience is important, as I mentioned before, it's all about those connecting moments. I'm sure, or I imagine, that for these two people, this was as important a moment of their retreat as anything else. Rice cakes and peanut butter. If there's anyone on this call who hasn't had rice cakes and peanut butter at Isabella Freedman, then congratulations, you are unique. So year-round, this was one of the big moves that happened that expanded who we are and what we do at Friedman. This really happened around 2009 and 10, when we really started to be year-round and never shut down, never close down the kitchen and open back up for Pesach or anything like that. Really fill the whole year, and we started to fill up the calendar to the point where last year we had about 80 retreats, 80 multi-night gatherings over the period of a year. And we could talk about business and stuff, but I'm not going to. But it's interesting. This is just a stunning picture. I think this is Joel Berenbaum, who's a Rebitzer with Tiferet Berenbaum, who worked here for many years, and many of you might remember Tiferet. Nigel, many of you know Nige. I wanted to just point out Nigel as a really influential person in Isabella Freedman's organizational history. He was on the board of Isabella Freedman for many years, in helping to get the Adama program running as a board member, and helping as part of a group stewarding the Elat Chaim merger in 2006-07, and then when we merged with Chazon in 2014, he of course is the CEO of Chazon. And Nigel has a really big heart, and he has a really big vision. And I think what's important about Chazon to me, the sense of vision, is let's imagine what a positive future for the world can be. That might not be how Chazon talks about Chazon, that's okay. We need to imagine what a positive future for the world can be. We need to have that vision. And for years before the merger with Chazon in 2015, and for years afterwards, not for the past couple of years, there was this big bike ride on Labor Day weekend. And one of the very cool things about this was that folks were raising money for causes that they cared about, as happens with, fundraiser runs and bike rides all over the place. But it's great to come together for a cause and to have people assemble and challenge themselves and have a great time, and the benefits of that spread out into the world. It's wonderful. This is a panel discussion during, I think, a food conference, but I just wanted to point out this kind of modality of, I forget what this was, but these folks were having a very intense conversation. And again, the sense of people being mutually uncomfortable can produce something over a period of days. It's not just this thing that they go in and out of, where we're really wrestling with stuff, and you get that sense of the push and pull, and people being in encounter with each other. Last year during Rosh Hashanah, I remember there was a Dvar Torah given in the big tent, the 250 people. The program grew very large over the years, and the person was talking about the climate crisis, and then someone came up to me afterwards and said, "This whole thing is like total BS, and we should all vote for Trump and go home." And then we had a l'chaim over Kiddush, and I talked to the guy for 3 more days, and it's very interesting. And it's very powerful model for the way that people can encounter each other. Just wanted to show some of the Sukkot that has happened. Sukkah Fest started, I think, in 2007, again around the Elat Chaim merger, where we started doing these big joyous holiday retreats. But at that time, it was like 50 people. And last year, the big sukkah down by the lake, I think, had 280 people in it. And then we had this other sukkah here for learning and singing separately, and the kids' sukkah. really, really amazing program. I'm sure many people on this call have great memories. Floating sukkah. And a lot of weddings, of people who had met at Isabella Freedman. Really, really remarkable how many people who have gotten married here also met here. And seeing the way that families and friends come together over a period of days, and what happens to a family. It's not. It illustrates the notion that a wedding isn't just between two people, but it's really about bringing together families and communities and creating something new. Really wonderful. This is actually my wedding. 2012. Oh. So this is a staff photo. I'm going to wrap up and we'll have a little bit of time, maybe. This is a staff photo from a few years ago, but I wanted to just lift up and mention some names. You know, the staff here have been what makes all of this stuff possible. That's, you know, maybe cliche or doesn't need saying, but I think it does need saying. They've been really, really dedicated, creative, thoughtful, strange and wonderful people who've come and given years of their service and their life energy to making all of these kinds of experiences happen. And here's Simone, who introduced the session, Jacqueline, who probably brought a bunch of folks here through the registration portal for 6 or 7 years. We have Chaya Klein, keeping kosher. I'm just picking some people out. Here's Tanya. I don't know if you can see my cursor actually, but here's Tanya Moody, who did housekeeping here for over 20 years. And really just a wonderful person. I'm sure many of us have had an opportunity to just stop and talk to Tanya walking down the main street.
Sorry to interrupt.
Weiss,
we have one more minute.
There's Ellie, who's been running this program today, planning it, and Shamu. Probably recognize a bunch of other faces, and some of these people no longer work for the organization, and some of them still do. And unfortunately, some of you might be aware that just a few days ago, about just over 30 people were laid off at Chazon and Friedman due to the economic fallout from COVID, and it's a destruction. It's a destruction, and of course we've canceled our planned retreats for this year, and we may do other things, but this is a photo. It might be shocking for those of you who don't remember that this happened, but there was a tree that came down during a hurricane right through the main building, right through the Great Hall. And so this is a symbol of destruction. Things happen. It's an act of God. And yet, this tree came down at a 90-degree angle to the building. So it came down right between the rafters. If it had come down at a diagonal kind of angle, the whole building would have been crushed and ruined. As it is, it came down exactly how it came down and was able to be repaired. And you can very clearly see the patch many years later on our roof, which needs to get redone one day. But but we recovered.
Adam?
And in some ways, things weren't the same as before, because this also happened during another kind of threshold moment of the organization. And some of you might remember the Daisy building that burnt down. And so we all know, I'm sure, all too well, that destruction and pain and suffering are a part of all of this, and of course of all of our lives. So how do we move forward? Well, here is my friend and teacher Arthur again in one of his core teachings in his magic show. So I just want to take that on and say, Gamzula Tova, all of the things that are difficult in my life and that I see in the world should be for the good. That's on us to make happen, so that those bad things did not happen in vain. This is during a Shavuot parade some years ago, the goat parade, Bikurim parade. That's Eli, who's now 5, and Noah's not in the picture, wasn't born yet, my wife Mag. And with this image, I wanted to let folks who don't know already, that after 13 years, I'll be graduating from Isabella Freedman and Chazon, and moving into the next chapter of my life, as the organization indeed moves into the next chapter of its life, which is a bit uncertain. And I'm incredibly honored to have been a part of all of these things, these pictures that I've showed. And it's not about me. I've just been here for a while. It's about all of us, and each one of you who are here have had your own deeply meaningful experiences at Isabella Freedman, I think. And so for me, my cup runneth over with deeply meaningful experiences, and it's time for me to do the next thing. So, so it's my, pomp and circumstance, my graduation moment, as we all move through different phases in life. That's the snapping turtle in the lake. Many of you have seen it. It's a really good picture of it. Yeah, snapping turtle, when it's on land, very, very slow. Time to slow down. When it's in the water, very agile, very smooth, even quite fast. You have to be quite fast to catch little fishies. So may we all know when it's time to slow down, know when it's time to swim, know when it's time to dive, when it's time to snap. May we all be immersed in the natural world. May we all be immersed in community. May we all grow to ripe, old, healthy age like this turtle. It's probably 40 years old. It's really old for a turtle. And may we all continue to come together in various ways as people who know and love Isabella Freedman, its history, and let's create its future. So that is my slideshow. I'm really looking forward to reading these comments, if I can read them afterwards. Thanks for making it interactive and participatory, and thanks for coming on the journey with me. Really, every one of you and so many others have been absolutely instrumental in what this is about. We have a lot to be proud of. Di Barti.